Hello, Year 3. Welcome to your next English lesson. Before we start, let's just check if we've got all of these things here. So check if you've got your English book, a sharp pencil, a ruler, and a rubber. Pause the video and go get all of these now if you don't have them all here, and then we can continue. Brilliant. So today we're going to be looking at plot point 2 of our write. So before we go any further, let's just write down on a fresh page the date and the learning objective, and then with your ruler underline the date and learning objective, and then I would like you to draw a line across the middle of your page. This will split up our work today because we're going to use the top part of our page for our inspiration station and then the bottom part of our page for our paragraph writing or our sentence writing. Okay. Also, before you do that, can you stick in your sheet, your plot point sheet, if you haven't done already? So pause the video and do all of that now. Great. So before we watch the clip again, just so we can freshen our memories of what it's like, let's just have a look at these pictures here. So these are going to show us what we're going to use in each chunk. So in chunk 1, we're going to be using words to describe what things things taste like. Okay. In chunk 2, we're going to be using action words. And in chunk 3, we're going to be using words to describe what things sound like. Great. So before we move on, let's watch the clip again, just so we can get an idea of what it's all like again. Let me just quickly share my screen with you. Great, so let's just watch this now. Okay, right. Second. Cool, let's move on to the next slide. Great, so we're looking at this second plot point today. I know that you've done your first plot point with Miss Kitching, where you were describing the grasslands of America and the scenery, and also the organisation of the ants. Today, we're going to be talking about how the ants were marching, the food that they were carrying. We're also going to look at the queen ants here. Can you see the picture that I'm circling? The queen ant, the one that's directing them all when they go into the ball. And then finally, we're going to be talking about when the anteater arrives and starts sucking up one of the small baby ants. Okay. So to begin with, I'm just going to play you the really short part of the clip, just so we can have an idea of, so we can see some of the details. Sorry, that we might want to write about. So I'm going to get this back up. Let me just put it back to what we're watching. So this is just a short part of the video, just so we can get an idea. I would like you just to look and pay attention to the food that the ants are carrying. Also, maybe how they're stood, how they're walking. Also, look at the queen ant here, where he or she stood. Sorry. And then also, I would like you to just hear the sound of the anteater when he starts sucking the ant up as well, because we need to be describing that later in our writing. So let's just watch this really short clip. Okay, right, so let me just get the slides back up. Cool. So, before we move on to our first chunk, I would like us just to look at our plot point chart that we've got here. And let's just look at this sentence. So, sudden and shocking arrival of the anteater. So this is describing really when the ant starts to get sucked up. Now I'd like you just to think whether this is a positive part of the ant's day, or a negative part of the ant's day. Remember, -5 is the worst possible part in their day, and +5 is the best possible part in their day. So I'd like you just to put across which you think best reflects their mood during, or best reflects their mood whilst the ant's getting sucked up. Okay, so pause the video and do that now. Great, we should all have a cross on our plot point underneath or above. Well, it should be underneath really, because I'm going to talk about that now. Underneath our second box. So, I think really that it should be about a -4, because the ant hasn't been sucked up yet, so it could get a lot worse. It could actually get eaten. But in that moment in time where it's just noticed that he's about to get sucked up, I would say it's a -4, because it's still a pretty worrying moment, pretty scary moment for all the ants. Don't worry if you put it as -5, that's absolutely fine. Don't worry if you put it as -3, but it should really be a negative intent. Okay, so let's make sure all our crosses are below the box. Great, once we've done that, let's move on to our first chunk. So, in our inspiration station for our first chunk, we're going to be finding two groups of words to help us describe these two sentences here. So firstly, let's look at this top one. How were the ants moving? Okay. So I've put here the ants were marching, because I saw they were marching a bit like an army. They were in a very good formation, weren't they? They were marching side by side, all in a good shape. So use that as some inspiration. I would like you just to come up with a few more words to help describe how the ants were moving. Pause the video now and do that. Thank you. Okay, great. We should have a few ideas now. Here's some more if you wanted some more inspiration. So like I said before, I had marching. Also, the ants could be pacing. This is a nice one. The ants could be hiking, which could sort of describe, or which could show that the ants may have walked quite a long way. And finally, the ants were striding. Great, so let's see if you can get a few written down if you haven't got any. So 1 or 2 would be fine, just so we can get an idea. Right, let's have a look at this second sentence then. Let's think of a list of foods that are being collected by the ants. So if you had a look at the video, you saw that they were carrying some, I saw they were carrying some berries. And can you see that I've used a noun phrase? I've described the berries by saying they were sweet. How they tasted, wasn't it? They tasted sweet. So have a look at, or have an idea of what you think the ants were carrying, and then use a noun phrase to help describe maybe what they tasted like. Okay, so pause the video and do that now. Great, we should all have some ideas. If we want some more ideas, I've got a few here. So, like I said before, sweet berries. The berries tasted sweet. Bitter leaves. I don't eat leaves myself, but I can imagine leaves they'd probably taste quite sour and quite bitter. They probably don't taste very nice. So that could be another one to use. Tangy nuts. I saw a lot of the ants were carrying different types of nuts, and that's quite a nice word to describe. Tangy or smoky nuts, maybe. That's another one. And then citrusy fruits. Citrus fruits are fruits a bit like lemons and oranges. I didn't see them carrying lemons and oranges, but I'm sure it doesn't matter. It's a nice word to describe what fruit tastes like anyway. Great. So let me just move on to a blank slide. I'm going to model this first sentence for us, just so we can get an idea of what we should be writing for this chunk. So I'm going to start off with the ants, just because we're describing how they're moving and what they're eating, or what they're carrying, sorry. So remember, capital letter at the start. So the ants were steadily marching. I'm going to use one behind the other. Ooh, the other. You see, I've also used a preposition here, one behind the other, describing where the ants are. Comma, collectively. Oh no, sorry, not collectively. Collecting sweet berries. My noun phrase there. And I'm going to mention two fruits: sweet berries and tangy nuts as well. I'm also going to mention why are they eating this food as well. Collecting sweet berries and tangy nuts for their supper. Okay. Describing why they are collecting food to start with. Great, so that's my first sentence that I'm going to write. I'm going to quickly highlight in green the noun phrases that I've used, which was sweet berries and tangy nuts. Okay. Right, now it's your go, just to have a go at writing this first chunk yourself. If you want, there's also a deepening the moment which we can use, which is to use a simile to describe the continuous marching. So if you want to have a go at that in your sentence, use that. That'd be absolutely fantastic if you could. So pause the video now and have a go at that, and we'll move on to the next chunk. Okay, right, let's go on to chunk 2 then. So in this chunk, we're going to be using prepositions to describe where the queen ant was. Okay, so if you can remember the queen ant, I think I remember her in the video slightly behind the rest of the ants. She was stood behind so she could probably see all of the ants, make sure that they were all safe. Okay, so behind is a nice preposition to use because it's describing where the ant is. Where is the important word there, isn't it? Great. So if you could come up with a few more prepositions, maybe use remember the lesson we had a few days ago, where we came up with a load of different ones. Maybe use that as inspiration as well. Pause the video and have a go at listing some more prepositions. Okay, right, let's go through some more prepositions we could have. I've got a big list here. Don't worry if yours are different, that's fine. That's great if you've got some different ones. But if you want some more, here are some which we could use. So behind, like I said, back, because the ant was at the back, or I might even write actually at the back. We're being very precise, we have to be very accurate with this. The ant is at the back. Near, because she's still close to them, isn't she? And like I just said, she's still close to the ant, sorry. She's slightly away from them, you could say, because all the other ants are in formation. They've got good shape, but she's slightly away so she can see all of them. Same with separate, actually. Those two are quite similar. Separate just means she's slightly away, slightly separate from the other ants. And finally, by, she's still next to them, which is similar to near, I guess, and close to. Near and close to are slightly nicer ones, though. So take one or two from my list if you want. And then I'm going to use these prepositions that we've got just to model the next part. So, because we're talking about the queen ant, I will start the sentence with her name. So the queen ant stood. I'm going to use behind as my preposition. Stood behind. Stood behind and proudly marvelled, which means proud, not proud, there we go, proudly marvelled at her brilliant troop. Troop is a nice word to use, actually, because it's almost describing the ant as an army. and the Queen, because we've already mentioned that the ants were marching, which is almost what armies do. Troop is another word of describing the ants as a bit like an army, and the queen ant could be the leader of the army. So in yellow, I'm just going to highlight the preposition. Sorry, let's get my highlighter up. Yeah, I'm just going to highlight the preposition that I used in yellow. There we go. Which is behind. Okay. I've just noticed as well, actually, there's another preposition in the first chunk here, one behind the other. I know we've used behind twice. That's okay because it's worded slightly differently, which is fine. Okay, right, now it's your go to write the second chunk. So if you use this as a bit of inspiration, obviously change it so it's different. All our work needs to be different, and then also using the words in our inspiration station to help us. If you want to go further and deepen the moment, you can use prepositional. You can use another prepositional phrase to describe where the ants were heading to as well. So pause the video and have a go at that now, and then we can move on to the final chunk for today. Great. So chunk 3, our final chunk. This is where the anteater comes and starts sucking up the ant, or the baby ant, should I say. Okay, so the first group of words I'd like us to come up with is to just help describe the sucking sound the anteater's making. So I've come up with one here, which is, it sounded mighty, it sounded loud, it sounded strong, it sounded powerful. Okay, so that's one just that we could use or take inspiration from to come up with some more. Okay, so pause the video and come up with some more of your own words to describe the sucking sound. Okay, great. We should have come up with a few by now. I've got a big list here just in case you wanted some more. So I've got mighty, I've got ear-piercing, I've got deafening. Those two are quite similar. Again, they're so loud that it's hurting their ears. It's making them not be able to hear properly. Explosive is another good one. Raging, howling. Howling's quite nice because it's that's how we describe wind, isn't it? Normally, when the wind's really strong, it's normally howling because you can hear it. Hear howling almost through your ears. Erupting's a nice one. Erupting because erupting almost describes how sudden it was. If you've ever seen a volcano erupt, it's very sudden. It's very loud, but it's very sudden. So that's a nice one. And finally, roaring as well. So now we have that list of words, we're going to go to our next list of words, which are words to describe a tornado. And I would like to think of some words to describe a tornado because tornadoes suck things up, just like this anteater is trying to suck up the ant. So I've come up with one word here, whipped. I think the tornado whipped. Okay, that could be that's quite a nice word to help describe a tornado. Right, pause the video and come up with a few other words yourself to describe a tornado. Great, so we should have come up with a few more words. Here's some other ones that I thought of. So, words to describe a tornado. Whipped, the tornado whipped. Whirling is another nice word for a tornado. It's whirling around, and you could almost say they're similar to swirling and twirling as well. It's that sort of motion of the tornado twisting really quickly. Okay. Thrashing shows that the tornado can be quite violent, maybe, and then coiled as well, which could show that again that the tornado is twisting around. Right, now we've got these words, I am going to model another sentence. There we go. So to start with, I want to firstly think this happened very suddenly, didn't it? Oh, that could be a good word to use actually. So suddenly. comma. Remember, we need to split our adverbs away up from our main sentence with a comma. So suddenly, mighty sucking sound erupted. So I've used mighty and erupted here, okay? Close by. Ooh. Close by. And the youngest ant's feet. Remember, the ant possesses its feet. The ant's feet is the ant's possession, so I have to use an apostrophe. Close by, the youngest ant's feet began to lift off the ground. They began to lift off the ground because of the powerful sucking from the anteater. Okay, so that's just another way of describing this ant's in trouble. Right, I'm gonna just quickly highlight in a orange, or in a red actually. Quickly highlight in a red just the words to describe the words I've used to describe the sucking sound. Okay, so mighty and erupted. Okay, fantastic. Right, now we've got all of this written, I would like you to finally, or to write, sorry, the final chunk for today. Okay, so describing the anteater's sucking sound and then also what happened afterwards. Okay, so pause the video and do that now. After that, that'll be the end of the lesson. Okay, so I will see you either in our next English lesson or next maths lesson, and I can't wait to see this work from this lesson as well.